Hi, third through eighth grade. We are going to do a video recording for our session for today. Specifically, today we're going back to the problem of practice that we started with when we had our professional development last week. So, just starting off, we met last week and we talked a lot about what a problem of practice is, as well as some guiding questions to guide us forward in our conversation of what our actionable next steps are going to be based on our problem of practice. Our purpose today is really stamping our problem of practice and then figuring out what those actionable steps are that we can come to next. I am going to go ahead and let you know that your pre-work is going, or your post-work rather, and deliverables will be based on what our problem of practice is. So make sure that you pay attention to that and that you provide responses on the Padlet that will be provided as well by the close of business on Friday. Okay. Friday, which is February 6th, by the way. Okay. All right, so we went through all of this. I'm going to be skipping some slides. I think the thing to note is that all of this is in line with our mission that we're focusing on, and really making sure that what we're doing is challenging and meaningful, as well as personalized to our students. Really honing in on that challenging and personalized aspect. Remember that these are our data points and what our goals are by the end of the year. Looking at our data, we're on the right trajectory. And so, yes, it's going to take a lot of work, but we absolutely can get there, okay? Reflecting on our data again, we're looking at this, we see that we've made major leaps. We are proud of our data. We are proud of where we are right now. We have a ways to go, but we've come a far way, okay? Looking at our K2 data, we see here that the trends are consistent with the overarching school. K2 has worked really, really hard, moving a lot of those reds, a lot of those yellows into the green and the blue. So kudos to K2 and Dibbles. Now looking at our ready specifically, we know, again, we've had this conversation that our greens, our dark greens have grown exponentially. So kudos to you. Our yellows have dwindled down. Our reds have dwindled down. Our focus area, though, if we look at this school-wide data, is that our stripy reds, we're having a challenging time moving. And yes, we have to acknowledge the fact that stripy red means that they are 3 or more grade levels below. That also means that we have to really dig deep into ourselves and think about what is within our locus of control of how to make progress there and close that gap. So again, we're here, we're looking at the data by grade level. We see K2, but we're focusing in here on 3 through 8, our testing grades. So looking at third, fourth, and fifth grade, the thing that we see is that for some of our grades, while we're making great growth, great shifts, like in our dark greens, our greens, and our yellows, our stripy reds are not moving as much, and we've got to make progress there. We're noticing the same thing when it comes to our middle school. So we know that our challenge is moving those stripy reds, but we need to pinpoint where is it that our actual problem of practice is. In our conversations that we had, we looked at the domains that existed throughout the school. And if we're looking at our overarching domains throughout the whole school, this is what we're noticing. Our phonological awareness, phonics, high frequency words, for the most part, we've made some great progress there. So kudos, teachers, you are doing the thing. When it comes to comprehension and specifically vocabulary, we are struggling, and we know that vocabulary impacts their overall comprehension in literature and informational text as well, okay? So we went through these. We talked about what a problem of practice is. It's an educational challenge that impacts teaching and learning outcomes, right? We defined the characteristics of that. We also went through answering some of these questions that lend themselves to the root of the challenge, right? we stopped pretty much at really being able to find that researchable problem of practice. And so this is where we're starting off today, looking at the school-wide problem of practice. We talked about these explaining significance and impact, but in order for us to really talk about significance and impact, we really have to hone in on what the problem of practice is. So going back to our data, the thing that I want to stamp is that as a school-wide entity, we know that our challenge is the vocabulary. And I also want us to look at it from the standpoint of each actual grade level and grade band. In third grade, what we can see based on the data is that our challenge here, when we go into the actual, diagnostic results. In our diagnostic results, we see that our area where we have the least amount of growth is vocabulary. That's third grade. If we look at fourth grade, we notice that our area with the least amount of growth is competing with vocabulary and informational text, but vocabulary lending itself to informational text. Fifth grade, the challenge again is vocabulary. It's very evident, it's very clear. Sixth grade, vocabulary is our challenge. Seventh grade, vocabulary is our challenge. Eighth grade, vocabulary is our challenge. So I'm going to stamp now, which I'm sure is not a surprise, that our problem of practice, when we look at our data, is focusing on vocabulary and how might we improve vocabulary acquisition and usage to increase reading comprehension across grade levels, because vocabulary and instruction in vocabulary and building that vocabulary directly impacts the actual reading comprehension of students. Okay, the things that all of us did a great job pointing out were the factors contributing to our problem of practice. That was our phonological awareness in K, ML supports for students across the school, attendance, vocabulary instruction, and comprehension skills. But all of those are contributing factors to this problem of practice. Our purpose here is to say, okay, now that we understand the problem of practice, what is within our locus of control? And that's where we want to focus in. I know that we had the conversation about teachers and what they're not doing, and that comes off very accusatory and as if we're saying that it's your fault that they don't know. That's not the case. In this, what we want to do is narrow the scope to the things that are actually within our control, okay? And the things that are within our control are the types of instruction and the ways of instruction that we're giving within our classroom. So one of the things that we're going to reflect on for our deliverable is, what is a challenge that I am having when it comes to vocabulary instruction? What is a growth area that I need when it comes to vocabulary instruction? And how is it that I can adjust or shift so that I increase and elevate vocabulary instruction? Okay, those are 3 questions that we are going to be answering in our Padlet for our means of reflection. Okay, The K2 team did a phenomenal job really sparring and grappling with those three questions. And some of the things that came up were the fact that some teachers said that, in their own research, they saw, and, we really had to stamp the fact that the structure of schools and the structure of the educational system comes from a white middle class lens, right? If we're talking about, specific terms, that would be the cultural capital that is celebrated within the school system per researchers like Pierre Bourdieu. Okay, that's one resource if you just wanted to find who it is that is stating, things of this nature. So with that said, there are some things that middle class culture has afforded their students that some of our students have not had access to, and we've got to build that bridge for them and provide them with those opportunities. So that's one. Understanding that the system at large has made it so that we have to get them to be able to make that connection, and we've got to support them in that and form those bridges with the experiences that they currently have and new experiences. One of the second things was that we should have some vertical alignment in the resources that we are using and what we are teaching students with vocabulary. Some brought up things like the Freyer model, and having the Freyer model be something that we use from K all the way up to 8th grade, right? So that as they come in, they become consistent in the way that they're studying vocabulary and internalizing that vocabulary. Another thing is really being able to be strategic with the vocabulary that's being pulled out of instruction, and really making sure that we're using this language and pushing for discourse and dialogue. Discourse and dialogue is essential to learning. There's a book, if you want to read, called Make It Stick, where the author really talks about the fact that a lot of times we have this fallacy of understanding, because we think in our brain, as we've read and reread that we've learned a topic, but in all actuality we have not learned that topic. We've just become familiar with what we've seen. However, if we were to reiterate it or have to explain it to somebody else, that would serve as an assessment to inform us of whether we actually understand what it is we're learning. So discourse and dialogue is essential. My request from you, again, as another deliverable, the last one I promise, is to think about what are the things that are within our locus of control that we can use as actionable next steps. Okay? So, these are the things that I really want us to hone in on. Study, focus. If you're watching this with your colleague, do it together. Have a conversation about it. The Padlet will be in the same email so that you can access it. And I look forward to supporting our growth as we continue forward. You all have been phenomenal. I know you're tired. We've got some more pressing and pushing to do, and I'm right in the thick of it with you. But we can do it. We can be successful, okay? Thank you so much. If you have any questions about anything, please let me know. But again, our deliverables are going to be answering the 4 questions that you are going to see within the Padlet. Have a great and beautiful day.